Tumbleweed Skies, written by Valerie Sherrard. In Chapter 1, please look at the pictures A, B, and C. Which picture best shows the setting of this story? So in your notebook, I want you to write picture A, picture B, or picture C and explain your choice. So write 1 or 2 sentences explaining why you chose the picture as the setting for the story. Chapter 1. I could tell right away that this wasn't a house that wanted me. It was a bright, sunny day, but that didn't help much. The place seemed cold and unfriendly. You could tell that the outside had been painted once or twice, but years of prairie wind and sun had stripped it almost bare. And even the barn and shed and all the fields around it couldn't save the house from looking a little lost. As we got closer, I could see that the curtains were dark and dull. The flower beds along the front of the house were empty, except for a few dying weeds. Daddy slid out of the car with me right behind him, and we started toward the door. He reached out to take my hand, but I pretended not to notice. I decided that if I had to be brave, and I promised Daddy I would, I might as well start right then and there. Reaching into the pocket of my shirt, I found the brand new 1954 penny Daddy had given me. I rubbed it for luck, like my friend Judy does when she has a penny. We walked slowly, which I hoped would give that penny enough time to work. But even so, we seemed to reach the doorstep in a flash. Daddy cleared his throat and knocked. He smiled down at me. Then the door opened, and there she was, Grandmother Appleby. She looked back and forth at us for a long minute before speaking. "Come in," she said, but there was no welcome in her voice. She stepped back, letting out a heavy breath that made her shoulders sag inward like a balloon deflating. "The child looks half-starved," she said. She shook her head and sighed again before showing us to a dark and hazy room. A large brown couch and matching armchair were crowded into the room, along with a big, clunky coffee table and end tables. It seemed that there was barely enough space to hold it all. Grandma crossed the floor, her thick black shoes clunking with each step. She pulled a cord on a lamp and a dim bulb came on. It didn't do much to brighten the room. "Sit here," she told us, pointing to the couch. She settled into the chair, adjusted herself a bit, and then looked me over like she was seeing me for the first time. I sat and wondered if it would be all right to ask for a glass of water. Daddy had told me not to ask for anything, but maybe water would be okay. My throat was real dry from the long drive all the way from Moose Jaw. Country roads on the prairies are pretty dusty by the end of June. I decided to wait it out for a bit. Probably she'd offer us something before long. Most people give me milk or lemonade when I visit them with my father, and usually a snack too, like a biscuit or brown bread and cheese or a cookie. But when she spoke, she never said a single word about anything to eat or drink. "So," she said, looking me over again, "I always knew it would happen one day, that you'd come begging." "Begging?" I exclaimed. "I never even asked for a drink of water, and I'm as dry as a dust bowl." "I was speaking," she told me, "to your father." Oh, how was I supposed to have known that? After all, she'd been looking at me while she talked. Even so, I knew I'd blurted out the wrong thing. I thought quick and said one of the mannerly things Daddy had taught me when I was a little kid. "I beg your pardon, ma'am," I said too. I smiled too, to show her I could be a good sport about having my thirst ignored. She turned to my father. "So, you're not So you are not so proud now, are you? I suppose not, Daddy said. Suppose? There's no supposing, she said. She crossed her arms and looked like she was waiting for something. No, Mrs. Mother Appleby, I don't guess there is. If you got my letter, you know why I'm here, and you know I've got nowhere else to turn. Someone's got to care for Ellie. Being kin and all, I was hoping you'd find it in your heart to take her in. Like I said in the letter, it would only be until I can get on my feet again. Daddy had just taken a new job, traveling around and selling pots and pans for the Marvelous Cookware Company. That's the name of them, and I guess they're probably marvelous all right, but I can't say for sure because I don't have a set. She seems a saucy sort of child, Grandma said. No, ma'am, she's a good girl, he told her. His face got a little red. Sometimes she gets a bit eager is all. I don't like children who speak out of turn, she said. Ellie knows her manners, Daddy insisted. Don't you, Ellie? Yes, sir. I knew I had to say it to show that I really did have good manners and such because, like Daddy just said, there was nowhere else for me to go. But I sure wished I could have just up and said what I really thought, which wasn't nearly as mannerly. And you have nowhere else to go? Grandma said. Nowhere, Daddy repeated. His voice was tired and quiet. She stood up, and so did we. She looked at me for a long minute and then back at my father. She almost smiled. No, she said.